giving you a vocational leg up on everyone else. Here's our career Sherpa, Julie Bauke.
Well, that's not pressure. 10:36, Ken Broo for Mike McConnell, and standing by is the aforementioned Julie Bauke on the AcuteHearingCenters.com hotline. Julie, welcome back. How are you? That's not pressure at all, is it? I mean, you could. Good Lord, how are you going to deliver on that?
Oh yeah, every week, baby, every week.
There you go. Now, I want to talk about robots. Can we talk about robots? When I was a kid, robots were big when I was a kid. You know, you get like these sets you could put together a robot, and they look great. They look like they're from outer space, and this is safe because robots are never, ever, ever, ever going to come into my life. Well,
remember Rock'em Sock'em robots? They fight each other.
Yes, that was good. And you know what I would do is I would put my name on one robot, and then I would take my brother's name and put it on the other robot. So rather than fighting him, I would beat his robot till his head snapped off. It was all very safe.
Voodoo doll. It's like a voodoo doll
It's
robot.
exactly what it was. It's exactly what it was. But I mean, I'm reading this story here. You know, we've got Amazon, coming to town and everything, and apparently robots aren't just replacing people at jobs. They can also fire you now, because a lot of this stuff that's going on with HR and everything, and I suppose monitoring employees is all done robotically anymore, is it not?
It is, and especially lower wage jobs where the work is fairly rote. You can actually measure someone's activity. So how quickly do you scan, if you're working as a cashier, how quickly do you scan products compared to what is determined to be the acceptable level of effectiveness and productivity, determined by probably another computer or robot somewhere. Do you take too many, is it smoke breaks? Is it potty breaks? How long are those? And so this desire to track everything and then measure everything is good in some ways, but now it's gotten to how we are judging and determining whether someone's doing their job well.
Well, I suppose on the one hand, it eliminates the prejudice of humans. In other words,
for sure.
Yeah, but it also imposes, sometimes are these algorithms that are just, what are they based on? What human being are they based on? And how I'm different than you. You have things that you have to do to live. I have things I have to do to live. So it's kind of like, what bothers me is that where's the baseline for all this coming from, and who's making up the baseline?
Right. So with Amazon, as you might imagine, they have tons of data that they say, okay, so if I'm working in a warehouse, here's how many packages, how many boxes I should pack, how many packages I should process in order for me to be considered to be a valuable employee to this organization. And there is certainly some sort of range there. But what they're saying is that when someone starts, they'll say, okay, here's what's expected of you. It's expected that you do this much work, however they measure it, numbers or percentages. Then there is here's how you're doing, but it's all, again, computer operated, computer generated. And then if you're not making it, there's a termination letter that's generated. Now they say, they do put the human element in at that point to talk to everybody, but and like you said, the good side is it does take the bias out of it, but the other side of it is we're not. So, for instance, I was thinking, like, let's say you work as a cashier,
sure, and
you're scanning items, and you're a little slower than everybody else. So maybe that's because you take the time to actually make eye contact and have, engage with the customer for a couple seconds. And, that adds to the customer's overall positive experience with the store. So I think what's dangerous is if you're only measuring, if you have to be really careful what you're measuring and what you're valuing as an organization, because whatever you gain, you lose a lot more along the way.
Well, I would think that it would be larger corporations, and I don't know what's larger than Amazon that would do this. Do you envision this coming down to, in essence, our grassroots level here in Cincinnati at Kroger?
It certainly could. I think it certainly. I think it could. I think we're a ways away from that. But when you take a look at what constitutes someone doing a good job as a cashier at Kroger, first of all, the organization needs to be able to define that, and the people doing the job also have to be able to understand what's expected of them. And, I remember this was several years ago, I was speaking to a group, and I asked what I thought was like a softball question. There's maybe 100 people in the room. And I said, how many of you know what's expected of you at work, know what success looks like in your position.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking, duh, that's easy, right? It was almost rhetorical.
Mm-hmm.
Well, like 5 people out of 100 raised their hands.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, my.
And the more I reflect on it, the more I'm actually not surprised. Because I think we don't take the time. We assume a lot of times, people know what they're supposed to do. Here's your job description. Just do your job. But we don't know, what does success look like? How do I know when I'm doing a good job and when I'm not doing a good job and where I'm falling short? And the lack of communication between the people who are responsible for judging that and the people who are responsible for doing the job, I think that gap is wider than we might imagine.
Well, if I was, you were in that situation, 5 people raised their hands, my initial reaction would be, well, whoever's running this company isn't doing a very good job communicating. And in this day and age, if you're not communicating and making sure your employees know what's expected of you, you ought to be fired by the board, is what you ought to be.
Yep. Absolutely.
And I don't understand why it's a difficult concept in this day and age, Julie, because I think if you talk to most employees, whether they're millennials, Gen X, Gen Y, whatever they may be, I think the one thing they want more than anything is to be told, I'm doing a good job, or here's how you need to improve your job. I don't think anybody wants to be blindsided by some robot. And I think that's a direct link right to the guy or woman that was running that company.
And what I see why those conversations don't happen is we're afraid of tough conversations. Yeah. We're afraid to say to somebody, here's some things you're doing really well. I know you want to do a good job. Here's some things that you may want to focus on, and here's some evidence and some feedback and some examples of times when I think this could have been done more effectively. We'd like to see you do this differently, because you have to start with the assumption that people want to do a good job. Mm-hmm. You have to start with that. If you walk in every day and you have a group of people that you lead, and your assumption is these people are just trying to get away with stuff. They're trying to get what they can from the company, and I'm gonna catch them. Then not only do you attract and retain those type of people, but you set up just sort of a whole deceptive workplace where you've created yourself as the overlord. Which, frankly, for some leaders, it gives them a level of job satisfaction, or they feel like job security. Yeah. Well, if I'm not here, these people won't do anything.
Yeah, right.
And it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
It is. Julie Bauke's our guest, the Bauke Group. Look, here's the bottom line on all of this. I think you have the in this case robots determining whether or not you're doing your job properly, and they can fire you because you're not fitting into whatever parameters that this robot has set up. But the bigger picture here is, the unemployment level in this country is so low. It is at a historic low level that employees won't put up with this crap. They'll go someplace else. And I don't know if you've noticed this or not, but the current group that we have, I don't know what they're called, millennials, whatever, they're not into careers. They're into jobs. And so they're not going to go to a company and say, I'm going to spend the next 20 years here. No. I'm going to build, like P&G would bring people in, and you stay here and you work at the corporate store. They'll say, no, I'm going to go someplace else. If they're going to do this to me, I'm going here. So all of this stuff may also have a backlash in another way, in that they're not going to be able to find employees to fill jobs.
Absolutely, and I don't think enough attention is being paid to that. I think there are some progressive organizations who really are thinking about how do we build a culture that people want to come to and recommend to their friends, and people want to stay at. Instead, they say, let's have a ping pong table. Let's have beer on Fridays.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's so condescending. It's so, the millennials and the Gen Zers, the ones who really are career focused, that's insulting to them. Mm-hmm. That, they think they can throw a ping pong table in there, and that's going to cover up for the fact that we're not being given interesting assignments, we're not being developed. Back in our day, they said, where do you want to be in 5 and 10 years? And you'd talk about, I want to be president of the company. Yeah. Now, people are saying, they're thinking, I'm going to stay here for 3 years, or as long as it still makes sense for me to stay here. Then I'm going to go find the next thing. If I don't see my next best thing here in these 4 walls, no big thing, I'm just moving on, versus putting down your head and deciding that misery is acceptable like our generation did.
You know, and I think it's healthy. It's healthy for that employee, and it's
It
healthy. It's healthy, really, for the people that own and operate these companies. Whether it's a multi-million-dollar, billion-dollar-year company, or maybe just a mom and pop. I think it's healthy for both because it holds both accountable. You're holding the employee accountable in that, okay, I'm going to do all of these things and give you these things that make this job interesting for you. Oh, and by the way, if I don't, I understand that I'm going to have to go out and eventually replace you. I think it's a healthy give and take there. And and maybe, the bad old days when you and I were operating and trying to get going in this business, maybe we paid the price for it, but I think we're at a good place right now. And as long as the economy stays the way it is, I don't see that changing. I think we're in a good place right now. I really do. We
are. And this is the best time for people who have career dreams and goals and aspirations beyond what they're doing right now. If they're in a job where they're miserable, and regardless, what's crazy, Ken, is that regardless of 70%, the number of high 60s to 70% of people who are unhappy at work, that number never moves, regardless of how good or bad the job market is.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're one of those people and you're saying, I'm miserable, I talked to somebody recently who said, I feel like I'm dying inside. This is your best time to go for your ideal job.
Right.
Don't wait and think that it's just going to knock on your door.
Right. Stop complaining about it. Take advantage of the situation, or you're just going to be miserable on every job you have. Maybe there are just some people out there, Julia, just miserable.
There are. For sure.
But if it's the other side of that, and you really want these are the best of times right now.
They are. Get what you want. I mean, you have actual leverage right now. Whether it's more responsibility where you are, maybe asking for a raise where you are, or pursuing something altogether different, the advantage is to the employee and the job seeker right now. So dream big and really think about what if I could reinvent this. If I had a whiteboard and could draw out my perfect job or career, what would it look like? You will never have a better chance to get it than you do right now.
Julie Bauke, I listen to you all the time with Scott Sloan. I'm glad we had a chance to visit right here. And, Scott likes to play golf in the summertime, so I'm sure we're going to have another chance here very soon.
Yeah. As I like to say, we could, I think eventually I could have made something of Sloaney, and, maybe you too.
I like that. Yeah. I need work. I'll tell you that. Julie, thank you so much. We'll chat again soon, I'm sure. Okay.
All righty. Bye-bye.